What is the purpose of the weekly Shuras held at the Marjah District Center and at Camp Hansen?
Really, that's an effort to organize. I had a hard time at first because when you look at the value systems in Marjah, at least, and I can't speak for all of Afghanistan, the family clan or the block, you may not talk. If you're a leader in one of the blocks, you may not talk to the next block over. So, it's kind of like a bug lamp. We try to get everybody together in the same room. We did it with the security force commanders, and that's had great success, and we've done it with all the elders. And that's our way of taking the informal power structure of the elders and linking it with the formal structure of the government by really, picture the 6th grade dance with all the girls on one side of the room, the boys on the other side of the room. It just takes one goofy person to get out in the middle and do something before everything is mixed together. And we're that goofy person in the middle of the room. So really, we're just creating a forum. Where the discussion goes isn't as important the fact that the discussion is happening. So you've had elders that have been elders in the area for a long time that haven't talked to their counterparts in other parts of Marjah. And now we've got them on a routine, on a scheduled meeting, and talking through their issues. They're starting to formalize business plans and incorporating contractors and looking at, who gets more water first because they need it more. They're just settling grievances informally and formally. And you see the same thing, the two Shuras you mentioned. One is a security Shura, where the commanders of all those agencies that I talked about, they all sit in a room and plan operations. They sit in a room and mutually, hey, I've got this capability. How is this relative to your capabilities? You put them together, the sum is greater than its parts. You see that start growing and taking off. So the first meeting, we ran. Now I largely sit back and let it go and find out where their gaps are, unique enabler support we can help them in, but generally try not to volunteer anything up till the very end. And it's the same thing with the elders. And you have no idea. It's entertaining because you don't know where the conversation is going to go. But the fact that they're all talking to each other and they all walk away with a changed impression and their government is collecting it all and representing that, it's pretty neat to see. So the purpose really is just organization.
What challenges does Marjah District currently face, sir?
Yeah, Marjah District faces a couple challenges. The first one is recognition as a district. They're kind of holding their breath and waiting. Are we going to become a formal district or not? Because with that comes budget, the ability to issue an ID card and land rights. That's the big things that come with becoming a district. The other problem is, on average, families have 10 children each. And those 10 children have 10 children each on average. And they're getting more and more efficient at farming, and the demand for water is increasing from when the canals were originally planned in '52. The population is significantly greater. So water is a zero-sum game, and it's the root of the non-Taliban conflict. Any conflict that you find in Marjah that's not Taliban related, you can trace directly to water. You may find it to be land rights, but land rights equals water rights. It all comes back down to water. So the challenge is getting enough water, because it's an agrarian community. They need water. Now, the solutions, there's all kinds of solutions for them sitting on the aquifer that they're sitting on, but they have to be organized and they have to be represented in order to pitch some of those solutions. So, come back down to organizing, district recognition, and seeing the problem for what it is. And it's a supply and demand of a zero-sum resource like water. That's it.
What does Marjah's future look like, sir?
Well, if they stay on the vector that they're on, they won't have any security issues. Right now, with loose overwatch, we're sitting in fairly loose overwatch of the police, and we're living with the Army, which is overwatching the police. I don't foresee any challenges to security. The Taliban can try an offensive, their dreaded spring offensive every time. They can try that. They're not going to topple the government of Marjah. Now, what is a threat or a risk to their future is that the government doesn't continue on the same vector they're on, of formalizing the informal and formal power structures, merging them together, representing the people, and gaining recognition at the province level. Because that's where you can bring things up like the water and land rights issues that'll be long-term problems. I see a lot of hand-wringing and gnashing of teeth over the water and land rights issues in their future. And as long as they have a political, peaceful way to resolve or at least start chipping away at those problems, they'll continue to progress. So I see a good future for Marjah, I really do, because the virus has been kicked out.
Would you like to say anything about the Marjah Day celebrations that are being planned for later this month?
Sure, absolutely. It's not too early at all. If you were to Google Marjah right now, you see all the bad stuff about Marjah. You can hear about Operation Mushtarak, and you read about essentially when the antidote was first injected into the body, and some of the white blood cells fought against the antidote. But the storyline stops there. You also read about how it was an opium hub, which is absolutely true, but it's not anymore. The storyline stops there. So Marjah Day is an attempt to showcase in Marjah for the people and the elders that informal power structure, and also for those outside of Marjah, media in particular. Look, we walk around Marjah with no threat. We don't wear body armor. We don't wear helmets. We have chased the enemy so far out into the desert that it's stretching our legs just to get to him. He certainly doesn't influence Marjah, and the threats to Marjah are political and from within, which is a good problem to have, and we want to showcase that problem. Because right now the narrative stops at the end of the bad stuff. I think there's a saying in there that if it bleeds, it reads, or something like that in the media. Well, it's not bleeding now. It's progressing. It's successful, and we really want to showcase that. So there's really two effects out of Marjah Day, and that's the locals. They'll see a military parade that you might normally see in peacetime, and which is completely realistic. And we walk down the center of Marjah all the time without security concerns. Take a lot of visitors there. And so the locals will have confidence in their security forces, which they've demonstrated great confidence in their security forces just by the amount of tips we see now and how many people come and engage with our security forces. And we also want to show the international and Afghan media, hey, this is your Marjah, and this is your Marjah in its natural habitat. So that's the objective.
Do you have any final thoughts about anything, sir?
Well, I think it's important to note that the Taliban and the poppy industry that was in Marjah, what is it? People ask the question a lot, what is it that kicked the virus out, if you will, or what made the virus irrelevant? What made a lot of ongoing, under-the-radar reintegration happening? And that's contrast. When the Marines come into Marjah, they provide a contrast to the Taliban. And that contrast is obvious. We don't know it all the time because it's part of our culture. We have a high value for human life. We try real hard not to hurt civilians in any of our operations. We pay for everything that we break. If you fall off your tractor and break your leg, there's a good chance a corpsman is going to give you some, in the scheme of Marjah medical care, some world-class medical care. If you fall off a tractor and break your leg and go to the Taliban, they can't do much for you. In fact, they might say, here, try this vest on and pull this cord when you get near something. It's a contrast. In all ways, we've provided a contrast. We've supported the religion of the security forces in zone. They all have mosques, they have speakers, they demonstrate, and we encourage their demonstrating their Islamic faith. It's a big piece of the culture, as you know. Showcasing that is important. That contrast, the Marines give instantly, just because the best ambassador of the U.S. is a 19-year-old on the street corner. He doesn't chop heads off. He doesn't hurt anything that doesn't need hurting. He's very judicious in his use of force. He's expert in his application of force, and he loves children. He doesn't kick dogs. He's just a good guy in the scheme of things. And that contrast has been passed. We call it transferring the hug. We've transferred the hug of the Marjah heart to the security forces. We're constantly working on why you should help the guy with his stuck truck. Just pull him out. Take the 5 minutes to pull him out. Why you should stop and talk to the people. Why you protect the people, because the information you get and the respect you get out of the people really is the key terrain. And you occupy that key terrain, the moral high ground, and that defeats the virus in the body. So always seeking that contrast and maintaining that contrast, where Giroa, the government of Afghanistan, provides a contrast in all ways, in every way they can, to the Taliban, and there's your long-term stability in Marjah. And I think it's important to note that from day one of Operation Mushtarak, of the Marines coming in with the ANA to Marjah, it was that contrast that was largely responsible for the amount of people we have joining the police, the amount of people calling our tip line, showing up to Marines giving information, and now the Afghan security forces. That contrast is the key weapon. That's really it.